MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. We got Jason Vivang here. Jason, it's almost, I guess it is full spooky season. Happy October. How are you? And what's going on?
Yeah. I mean, Halloween is right around the corner.
If anyone's watching this episode on our YouTube, again, youtube.com/MLS Aces, I think it is, or it might be @ MLS Aces. No clue why. There's an @ in there. Jason looks very enthused to be recording tonight's episode. It's not that he's sick at all or anything like that.
I'm trying my best here. Okay.
So if this is an episode where Tom is rambling, it's because Jason needs to rest the voice. But
it's spooky season for me. It's spooky season for the Fire and NYCFC, and it's just generally spooky season for October.
It's spooky season for Jason's immune system as well, but it's not spooky season for FC Cincinnati, because last week FC Cincinnati, they won not yours, but they won the everyone's 2023 Supporter Shield trophy, title, whatever you want to consider it, really, I guess at this point. Nice piece of a award to hand over to the front office, hand over to the facilities. But I think more of the spark in conversation after Cincinnati won the Supporter Shield was the fact of the comments of Pat Noonan, Cincinnati's head coach, really saying that the Shield is more important than the MLS Cup to really decide.
We have this conversation every year.
But opinions change, right? So are you in Pat Noonan's camp in the 2023 version of Jason Vivang?
I feel like it comes down to I don't know. Everyone's going to disagree about everything here, because there's the argument of importance and also difficult to win. And I think you could make points about both being hard to win. I feel like the Supporter Shield, I feel like I don't even know what I said last year, but I feel like I've always been in the camp that the Supporter Shield is a bigger trophy than MLS Cup.
Okay.
I don't think that. I just, like, if you look at what you need to do that, you have to be good over 34 games, not 7 or 5 or however many it is now. Just keep adding new ones, but But I mean, at the end of the day, if the Fire are winning either, I'm not like, I don't know. Maybe I'm not in the same one's way better than the other. I don't think it's that big of a difference. I think if the Fire won the Supporter Shield and didn't win MLS Cup, it'd be kind of like, that kind of sucks, because it feels like winning Supporter Shield is then you step into winning MLS Cup, and that's the most logical in my mind. But if you win MLS Cup without winning Supporter Shield, I'd still be like, that was sick. That was that. You know what? Whatever the Fire win next, that's the one that's more important.
Yeah, that's the most important trophy.
So talk to me in 2035.
I mainly threw this on the notes to talk about tonight because I know you slightly actually get annoyed that we talk about the same topic every year. And I really just like throwing it on there. And I wish Sam was here to really just get into the full debate.
Sam loves this debate.
He loves it.
It's heated with it.
Yes. So I think the more normal, rational human being can sit there and be like, both are really important. Yes, MLS Cup winner is normally recognized as the league winner for the year, right? I think that's the general fan recognizes that. I recognize that as, per se, this fake banner behind my head right here. I mean, I recognize the cup as the league winner, but I do value the Supporter Shield probably slightly just below the cup in my own opinion. But if we win the Supporter Shield, if my team won the Supporter Shield, I'd still be thrilled. I'm not going to sit here and cry that we were the best team over a 34 game regular season.
I think that whatever, it's a logical thing to say after winning the Supporter Shield.
Mm-hmm.
Will his opinion change if Cincinnati win MLS Cup? Probably. Yeah. I could totally hear him going, well, actually, this one's more important. That's the thing about the two trophies. It's not like one is drastically better. I think both are incredible achievements, and oftentimes they're not won by the same team.
I think MLS, to me, I just slightly put MLS Cup over Supporter Shield because to me, it's you were good enough to make a playoff. That's, more than half the league.
Do you feel like the MLS Cup gets lowered each time they add more playoff teams? Because the more playoff teams that get in, because I see what you're saying, because you earn your spot into competing for MLS Cup,
and then
so you don't even have the Fire or the Rapids or whatever to beat up on TFC. Like, so in that sense, it's actually harder to win MLS Cup. But like this is, you just go in circles. Like I could go in circles about it. I could argue.
know.
I bet you I could convince any random fan either one is better in the same day. I could just say, this one's better, and here are all the reasons why, and they'd be like, okay. And then I go to the next guy and tell him why the other one's better.
I don't love the format and the amount of teams that make it in for the MLS Cup playoffs. I still value the Cup slightly above the Shield. But, like, if I'm looking at, like, ignore Club World Cup, ignore even CONCACAF Champions Cup. It's going to take me a little bit to get used to saying that. Ignore those two competitions as the international competitions, right? Or fuck the Club World Cup. We're not. The MLS isn't even on.
We're talking about 2 trophies.
If I'm talking about just like trophies that an MLS team can win in a year, and what I would value in NYCFC winning, and again, this is my argument every year. I would love for NYCFC number 1 to win CONCACAF Champions Cup, be the best team in the region.
Yeah, I don't think that's debatable. I think that
would be
everyone
ideal.
Would say.
For me too, it is then MLS Cup, be the best, be the recognized league winner in your league. Then for me, it's trophy number 3 is the Supporter Shield. Trophy number 4 for me is still Open Cup over Leagues Cup. And then trophy 5 for me is Leagues Cup. But I think eventually Leagues Cup will probably pass US Open Cup. I just think Open Cup is the tradition and everything.
I think it'll take a long time for that to switch.
Yes. I think
the Open Cup is like it just feels right.
Yes, exactly. It's the traditional soccer tournament that I think most.
It's also been like listed for decades now. Like there's trophy winners from 2001. Like there's
trophy winners from 100 years ago.
Yeah,
it's Open Cup. It's
a far. Leagues Cup is like, oh, so you won like the 3rd Leagues Cup. Great, man.
Exactly. And right, it's going to take time and everything like that. I think the more important to steer away from Leagues Cup versus Open Cup now as a side tangent. Let's steer into more. I think
debating trophies.
what I want to give major credit to for Cincinnati in winning the Supporter Shield is kind of this new leadership group that took over from the worst expansion team in MLS Cup history, in MLS history, to continuously one of the worst teams over and over again, multiple time wooden spoon champion, to now the best team over a 34-game season. Pat Noonan, that entire front office, how they were able to bring in players, sell players like Brenner, and you have Brandon Vasquez, and you have a Yerson Mosquera, Matt Miazga, the guys that they were able to bring in, the guys that they were able to build this entire roster around, that went out and won this club's first MLS version of a trophy. I know they won a trophy in USL as well, so I'm not going to – I've already been called out by that by some fans. They do have multiple trophies in their club's history. But as far as the MLS version of this team winning their first trophy, I just really have to give credit to the growth that they've shown over the years, because there was a point I just never thought this team was going to be good. And they finally got the front office hires right. They finally got the head coaching hires right. And that has built the on-field product for sure. Yeah.
I think we laughed about them constantly. I personally made fun of them constantly. And you know what? They changed things up, got, their heads down, and built an amazing team. Like this is fully deserved. It's almost like cooler to see just like some team, like a team going from like just that bottom coming in. They were clearly, in over their head almost, it felt like in the beginning. I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but they didn't make a ton of signings when they came over from USL.
They they pretty much signed like more than half, I think, the USL roster at that point.
That's what I thought. Yeah, so they kind of went in and took like a slow build where we've in an era where we've seen expansion teams come in just hot. I mean, look at like the past 5 teams: St. Louis,
Boston,
Charlotte, Austin, Atlanta, NYCFC.
You've missed a few teams in between.
I definitely missed like 5 in between. LAFC obviously came in hot. But my point anyway, without trying to remember every expansion team in each year, They took a way different approach, and
Yes.
you're now seeing like the dividends or whatever, the payment from it.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see. I mean, look at that. They went from worst to best way quicker than half the league.
Literally. They were able to win a trophy. Maybe it was a little bit longer than we've seen like an LAFC or some
Atlanta.
other team, right? Like win a trophy in their MLS version, but at the end of the day, they did it, and I think this team is on the right path to being a very tough team over the next at least 4 or 5 years. I would probably argue in there, but it is MLS. Things do get tough,
The
and
Fire made the playoffs twice in 13 years, so like that's crazy.
yeah.
So going from double back-to-back wooden spoons to winning the league is pretty impressive.
And I mean, look, I'm sure there's teams out there, just like teams we'll talk about in 2 seconds, that wish they had the right head coaching hire. And we'll get into some head coaching firings as of right now. So over the past, I guess 2 weeks where we haven't chatted, we have had seen DC and Minnesota both let go of their managers. Let's start with DC and Wayne Rooney. So after being eliminated this past week, DC and Wayne Rooney have parted ways. It's weird that right now DC currently sits in a playoff spot, but they have the eliminated symbol next to their name. It doesn't look right to my eyes. But let's just quickly chat about Wayne Rooney. So he's managed 53 games for DC United in his time in charge, 14 wins, 13 draws, and 26 losses. Not a lot of success under Wayne Rooney. To be honest, I thought somewhere like he had way more success in the short period. And in my brain, I tricked myself to believe that. But really, his biggest success probably came in a round of 32 appearance in the Leagues Cup where they lost to Philly. Or honestly, they'll probably finish at a somewhat kind of high spot in the Eastern Conference, but still missing out on the playoffs. So I'd probably say the Leagues Cup this year was his biggest successful run with DC United. I mean, I'll start it off and really just say I know they had some injury, mishaps at DC during Wayne Rooney's tenure, but to me, it always felt like a roster build of like just leftover toys, or I can't think of the actual right saying to that, but like he just never, I felt like, had players on his roster that fit the correct formation of how he was trying to play it. Like I felt like there was just always so many fullbacks. There wasn't enough center backs on the roster. The midfield depth was nothing. You had a Christian Benteke who kind of exploded onto the scene this year and was your best player, but there was just never, I think, enough given to Wayne Rooney, whether that was from the front office or whether that was from his own decision making as leader of this club, to really make DC actually a competitive team. Sure, could I have seen them pop into like a 9th spot in the Eastern Conference? Yes, and they were fighting for that up until this past week pretty much. But I just never felt like that. Looking back at it now, I never felt like Wayne Rooney was a foregone great leader for DC United. In my brain, like I said, I've tricked myself into thinking that at least for a short period of time, his DC United squad looked unbeatable. But I mean, 14 wins in 53 games is clearly the numbers saying he did not do a great job in charge of DC.
Yeah, I mean, I think Wayne Rooney, like just the name, you just expect kind of like greatness, especially for like people like us who I feel like personally, when I was getting into soccer, Wayne Rooney was like at his heights.
Yes.
He's just one of those names where it's like you just expect good soccer with Wayne Rooney, right? And like you said, it ended up ultimately not being good enough. I think there's a lot of people calling for the front office to also make some changes. So
I can see that.
I think that is part of it. But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think Wayne Rooney ended up even really wanting to stay. It sounded to me like it was, I think they said mutually parted ways. And It sounded like he was sort of had one foot out the door, which maybe contributed a little bit. I know he had some comments about MLS and the refereeing and stuff in the past. So I don't know if it ever was just like the right match. And it already sounds like he's looking back at the championship in England. So I just feel like it wasn't the right fit from the start potentially. And we're kind of just seeing them move on from that and hopefully it helps. But I think at the same time, like being 9th, being 10th, 11th in the conference is just not good enough anymore, especially when you have teams that are just, there's gaps. Like the gap between, like who we were just talking about, Cincinnati, but even if you were dropped a little bit below on points with Orlando, Philly, Columbus, the gap between them and a team like DC, and honestly, I'll say the Fire, even NYCFC, all of our teams, the gap is pretty big. Like I feel like the difference in the expectation is wild at the moment. I think the gap is too large in between some of these teams, and it's just because like the Fire actually have like one of the highest payrolls in MLS, if not the highest. And it's just there's just mistakes up and down the board. And I know that I made this into like a bigger conversation, which I didn't mean to do. But
no, it's fair.
I think like it goes back to just Wayne Rooney being gone. Is just the expectation is higher, especially right now when you have teams who are breaking records. Seems like almost every year you have teams getting to record point totals. I mean, obviously not this year yet, or can't happen. But it's still like Cincinnati's on 68 points, and to be on 40 points is that's 10 wins away.
I think the thing that I just want to finish up quick with Wayne Rooney was I remember even when they made the announcement that he was the new manager right last summer, that he was only guaranteed a contract through this year. And I remember us talking about how like it's kind of weird. Like it doesn't seem like the long-term answer. It doesn't seem like Wayne Rooney's going to be here the long term. Well, end of the 2023 season, and it's not. Wayne Rooney's not the long-term answer. And yes, he's always had his eyes set back on Europe and England, and it looks like he's.
Well, he started at Derby County, and he's going back to the championship. It sounds like, and
6th place Birmingham.
Yeah, maybe that's just what he wants. Maybe he wants to try and be in the Premier League at some point, which is kind of that's the goal, I'm assuming.
I would assume.
And that's probably where he feels most comfortable too. And he probably came here, was like, oh, MLS, I can kind of boost a team, boost my career. Maybe it didn't work out, so he's going back. But I don't know. I mean, I think just at the end of the day, it wasn't good enough. I don't feel like either side had a ton of trust in each other.
I can agree, and I think to your latter point of like it not being good enough. To be honest with you, I don't even think making the MLS Cup playoffs at this point is good enough. I think it's good enough to save your job, but I don't think it's good enough to actually
especially with the play-in now. Like, made the playoffs. Like, if the Fire make the play-in, and we're like, oh, we're going to keep Heights and roll this back, it's going to be very disappointing for a ton of Fire fans. And I know that just personally from my experience and people I've talked to who are Fire fans, it's just that it's not making the playoffs. Like I don't think the NBA fan game says that they make the playoffs. I'm pretty sure with the play-in in the NBA, it's like you didn't make the playoffs if you don't win those games.
But I think with Major League Baseball, it's technically you make the playoffs, right? So it's like
that's different because it's like the wild card games is like a 3-game series, is it not?
Fair, 100%. So
right.
And that's where I say, right, like making the 8 or 9 spot in either conference is not good enough to me if I'm a fan of a team, and I am a fan of a team fighting for an 8 or 9 spot right now, and we need some help to get there, right? So we're
playing each other for potentially the 9 spot or 8 spot.
NYCFC needs some help before that. There is a Charlotte-Miami game that I'll be keeping my eyes on, but
we need help too.
You guys win, and
if we win, I think we're in. Wait, but I don't see. This is where I was looking at this earlier because if we win, we'll be on 43 points. But if Montreal and New York both win, we wouldn't make it.
The first tiebreakers wins. So if New York won, you would be at 11, tied with them. And then I think it's goals scored. So because then that doesn't make sense. Because then why you would be over New York right now? I don't know. Maybe it's
because we're under New York Red Bulls right now.
And
so based on that, my guess is that because we have all the same points, same wins, same draws, same ties, losses, goals.
I'm gonna say it's either home record or away record or goal differential. It's one of those. I don't know, but yes, I think case in point, Wayne Rooney didn't do enough at his time during his tenure at DC. And I think we can both say, or you let me know what you think, is Adrian Heath as well didn't do enough during his time as
no.
manager of Minnesota United being fired. I'll quickly run through this, and then I want to hear your thoughts on Heath. But Heath has been around one of the longest tenures in Major League Soccer before getting let go this past, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago. He's been manager since their MLS debut in 2017, 251 games in charge with 97 wins, 51 draws, and 103 losses. Way more success than Wayne Rooney. 2019 US Open Cup runner-ups, 2020 MLS is back semi-finalists, and 2020 MLS Cup playoff conference finalists. I want to hear your thoughts since I gave my Wayne Rooney thoughts first.
I mean, I think this is just a case of the team's better than the record. Maybe the Heath has grown stale in that area. I think there's some coaches in MLS that have been around for a very long time who probably are just going off of merit at this point, at less recent results.
Peter Hermes.
Hey, I wasn't gonna say it.
I said it. Tom Sweezy said it.
But I mean, I think this is another case where it was like he's had success, but how long do you kind of have that success carry you forward, right? Like Savarese had a ton of success in the early time with Portland, and he's gone. I think the proactive clubs who want to be good and want to be better and better each year, you can't just rely on historical success of coaches. Sure, they've done it before, and we've seen a lot of where head coaching experience actually does matter quite a bit in MLS. But I think in this case, they need a fresh mind in there because the team is better than 11th in the conference currently. And I don't think they've done anything to deserve a playoff spot necessarily this year. And I don't think Heath has really shown he's going to lead them to a MLS Cup.
No, I mean, look, Adrian Heath, he's been at the club probably a few years longer than he should have. I think what was it, 2 off seasons ago, they gave him the contract extension, and I can very vividly remember saying why he hasn't, like, and it's not that I think he's a bad manager. It's just he hasn't proven anything since 2017 to 2023 that he was good enough to lead Minnesota United to success. Even the Open Cup in 2019, where they were runners-up, where they lost to Atlanta United. Like, Atlanta United was the clear-cut favorites in that game, and Minnesota United was, like, running with the hot hand. Well, like, sometimes that just kind of means shitty team got lucky and made final. like at the end of the day, like, that could be the case, and I think that was the case for 2019. It's Adrian Heath, I think, was overstaying his welcome by probably 3-ish years, if you ask me. And I understand that some head coaching gigs in Major League Soccer, there aren't the short-term success. It isn't the Bradley Cardinals with St. Louis City in year one. I understand that long-term projects exist, and you have to give coaches sometimes time to have that long-term project be fulfilled. But you're also going on 6 years.
Yeah,
plus.
you're not
That's
starting
not a long-term project anymore.
Yeah, like at that point, your philosophy is through the club. Like your players are coming in. You're like, I feel like I keep going back to the Fire because it's just easy for me.
It's your example.
But Ezra, I think, didn't get enough time when he was fired, which was only about a year and a half. I think like borderline 3 years might be the max of like what I would be able to be like, okay, this is his plan. But you obviously in that time need to see improvement, right? Like the first year a coach
is different too.
Yeah,
100%.
But the first year a coach comes in, you can't expect the whole team to be his type of players. He might come in and be like, I don't want this guy at left back. I want to get someone else. Like that happens all the time. That's just nature of coaching and player relationships. And I think that takes some time to get through. It also takes a lot of time, the tactics of certain coaches and what they want to be doing. So I think throughout like 6 years or whatever, 7 years, there's plenty of time. You had your time, like you had minor success, but there's been a solid amount of talent through Minnesota in that period of time, and they haven't won anything.
I think the thing that bothers, well, the first thing that I want to say, and then I have a second point. The first thing that I'm going to say that I think bothers me about the Adrian Heath hire, right, is for years, how many times did we hear that he was the striker whisperer? He was gonna, like once he gets his ideal 9, you're not going to stop an Adrian Heath offense. Well, you went through what? Christian Ramirez, you went through Luis Amarilla, you went through Angelo Rodriguez, Mason Toy, Abu Dunladi, Darwin Quintero. Like, how many strikers and DP level strikers and everything in between? Kai Kamara, right? Like, how many guys in between are you going to sign and not have the production that was promised when Adrian Heath got that top level 9? I'm not saying some of those guys weren't rough around the edges. I'm not saying some of those guys maybe weren't MLS quality. They weren't. But at the end of the day, there's also guys like a Kai Kamara, like a Christian Ramirez, who did have success in other places after Minnesota. So I think, he needed to move on. I think the club needed to move on, and it took a little bit too long. Yeah.
And that's not to say either that like he very well could get another MLS job and have success somewhere else.
Yeah.
I just think
I think he
sometimes
should.
it takes a new setting or place to kind of restart, your philosophy, regrow what you believe, and get a new club, get a new idea, new people around you, and maybe that takes off, and maybe it will. But I think at Minnesota with Heath, the relationship was kind of it run its course.
Yeah, 100%, right? And I don't want to just have this be a shit on Adrian Heath session. I do think he's
that's why I wanted to say, like,
yeah,
like if he goes somewhere else, I'm not saying he's not going to be successful. If he goes to the Fire, I'm not saying I wouldn't be like I would be pissed. Like, I'd probably be like, damn, that was actually not a terrible signing.
No,
but
like
I think it like he is a good manager. It's just in Minnesota specifically, the relationship and where he could take that team. We have seen it. We've seen it for long enough where I think they made a good decision.
100%. And Jason, my question to you next is: have you seen enough of Josh Wolff in Austin? Because Austin FC sporting director Rodolfo Borrello has said that him and the club have faith in Josh Wolff as they look more towards the long-term future of the club rather than just the short-term, or I think he literally said middle-term future of the club. So do you agree with the point that Josh Wolff is going to be heading into the 2024 season as manager of Austin FC after 3 seasons now where we've seen him make the playoffs one time?
I think this one's a bit tougher for me. Like, I was very high on this Austin team and Josh Wolff going to the season. I think maybe we'll do our little look back on our predictions, but I know we don't need to say it right now because we don't need to do
next
that.
Week. Post decision day, we'll get into our look back at our predictions.
Anyway, I was very high on that team. I think at this point, I don't really know what to think. I personally don't mind them extending it, letting him continue and just seeing where it goes. But I think at this point, the leash is pretty tight. I think last season, Vaughn, like a lot of people had said, Austin has lucked out in a lot of these games where they've somehow, I forget what the whole conversation was about Austin, but it was sort of like they're not as good as what we saw. I was kind of in the camp where it was like, I think they're going to be pretty good again. I was wrong. But maybe so with that all being said, I think this next year is massive for them, right? Like, I think if they start out within 10 games and they're in the trenches of MLS wooden spoon contention, then he's gone. But I think the leash is pretty short at this point. And I don't mind them keeping him around for another year because I do think getting a new manager, you can get into sort of a rut where you just kind of flip through managers year by year and you never get any better. There's a couple teams I pop in mind off that one. But I think for Austin, keeping him is not a bad call in my mind, but it is a short leash.
Look, I think I don't love it personally. I think the performances we've seen from Austin this year were worse than we saw Austin year one in Major League Soccer, if you ask me. I understand there's a lot of different cases, right? I understand CCL is his own beast, but that was an embarrassing performance against the Haitian club. I understand it was in the DR and it was a whole, thing. That's an embarrassing
Their
exit.
whole start to the season was incredibly embarrassing.
I also don't know how many times you're going to get player signings wrong. Spending all this money on Thomas Pochettino, who never worked out and he moved back to River Plate. Spending all this money on Giassi Zardes. I mean, look, I called that as being not a fit. I didn't like the signing specifically to Austin. And not to toot my own horn, but Giassi Zardes did nothing for Austin FC this year.
They looked like the expansion side this year.
He is a very young manager. This is his first ever head coaching gig. And not saying he won't be a good manager down the line, but I can see this being a case where he gets fired from Austin early next year after some rough early season performances. He has to go be an assistant somewhere. He gets hired back in a second head coaching opportunity, and he's a good manager after that. Because I think he has a lot of good pieces tactically that he likes to roll out. And he has made some good signings. There has been some good pieces to it, right? I can understand that. I just don't think, to your point, similar to Adrian Heath, just right now with Austin FC, it's going to work out. Year one, he finished 24th out of 27 teams in the league. Yes, year two, he finished 4th out of 28 teams, but that was behind a very heavy Sebastian Driussi MVP run. This year, currently, before heading into decision day, he's 24th out of 29 teams. I just don't think he, at this point, has enough to be a successful MLS manager right now. That's how I'll finish up my Josh Wolff take.
I think I had something in mind. No, this is what it was. I said maybe mid, they have a short leash and they fire him mid-season. But I'm kind of going back on my opinion there because after thinking about it, I'm like, then you kind of lose 2 seasons.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily disagree, but I also am not completely changing my mind. I do think giving him another year isn't we've seen him have success and we've seen him fail.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like you said, he is a new coach. This is new to him. I think giving him a little bit extra is maybe the smart play if they're willing to be patient. But I actually disagree with my own point of letting him go mid-season because I just
circles now, bro.
Yeah, I don't think firing a coach mid-season is a good idea.
I agree. Year 4 would be it for me, right? If you're gonna give him this statement and saying you have faith in him for the future, I think you have to completely give him 2024, the full year. Agreed. And if you don't, you start fresh in 2025. You're just running a very heavy risk that 2024 is another waste of a year, in my opinion. Yeah. But we'll see moving forward. I guess if Josh Wolff can figure it out, I like him. I think he does a lot of things right, but I also think he does a lot of things wrong as well. Let's move things forward. I just want to quickly mention the MLS Next Pro. I don't know if it's the Cup playoffs or just MLS Next Pro playoffs, however you want to say it. They're continuing on. We're on to the conference finals or the semifinals, however you want to word it there. But the number 2 New England Revolution 2 are hosting the Columbus Crew 2 at Gillette Stadium this upcoming weekend. And the number 1 seed Colorado Rapids 2 are hosting number 4 seed Austin FC 2 at Dick's Sporting Goods Park this weekend. So if you want to see some pretty talented squads, especially the Colorado Rapids 2 squad, they were the number 1 overall seed in the league this year, then check out some MLS Next Pro Cup playoffs, whatever you want to call it, this upcoming weekend as we get closer to that final over there. Let's move on to some U.S. soccer news, and there's a lot of rosters dropping this past week. First and foremost, let's start with the big boys. Let's start with the full senior squad. The USMNT roster has been announced and called up for the upcoming Germany and Ghana friendlies. I'm not going to read through an entire list of names because we're going to talk about a few different rosters here, and I feel like that's absolutely going to bore anyone listening or watching this. So, Jason, I'll start with you in the full senior team roster. Give me 2 players you're excited about.
So I read a lot about Leonard Maloney.
Bro, I love Leonard Maloney. Yes, give me this. Let's make this a Leonard Maloney podcast. That's my dude.
I am so excited to see what he can do because it sounds a lot like this is the guy to either back up Adams or play a similar role, especially with Adams having a decent amount of injuries. When I saw this lineup, I was pretty excited about it, to be quite honest. I was like, wow, this is one of the better U.S. soccer lineups I've seen in a while. And then I was like, who's Leonard Maloney? And I did some digging, and he's awesome, man. This team, Heidenheim, has just fucking smashed all expectations nonstop, and he's at the backbone of it. They're playing in the Bundesliga. A lot of people didn't even think they supposed to be there, and then they were heavily picked to just get relegated immediately. And they're actually competing. Like it's like this is a crazy story without even having an American on the team. But I'm really excited because I think what he's able to do might be the perfect fit in our midfield, where we're probably the thinnest in terms of number 6s. Obviously, Adams has dealt with a lot of injuries, and it sounds like he might be getting surgery or it's extending. I don't know. Yeah. We saw Eunice play there, and at first when I saw the lineup, I was like, I kind of hope we see Musa play back at that role because I kind of liked what I saw out of him there. But having Leonard Maloney as another option is like that's the guy I'm going to be keeping my eye on to see how he plays, how he fits. And I think technically he's still a dual national. So
before, yes, he is still technically a German-American dual national, but before we move on about Leonard Maloney, and I don't want to cut you off, you let me know when you're done because I have to talk about
No, you go. You go ahead.
He is one of my favorite stories. He won the 2 Bundesliga last year with Heidenheim when they weren't supposed to even be contending for promotion last year in the German second division. And now he's the starting D mid for this team, like you said, Jason, that's competing. I think they tied some giant German club very early on.
Like Leverkusen or something.
He's playing well. I think he has like 2 goals this season or in all competitions or something like that right now. Like he is a very, very good player. He's only 23 or 24 years old. Like I am so excited about him. I've literally been following him since like, I was looking up where Americans are in the major leagues before the European season started, and I just came across him randomly. I followed him on FOTMob, and then all of a sudden I'm just seeing him start. I'm seeing Heidenheim win. I'm seeing like all this stuff. He is the first player in their club's history to represent any nation at the National League level, like at the top level.
Oh, yeah, I did read that as well.
That's
insane.
Like 5 or 6 years ago, they were playing in non-professional soccer in Germany, and now this club's worked their way up to the Bundesliga level. And like, it's just sick story from a club perspective, from a Leonard Maloney perspective. Like, he's like we were talking about this U.S. national team a few weeks ago. He is the type of player that you have to give a shot to, playing at one of the best leagues in the world, to see if he can be a fit for this 2026 World Cup roster. And I truly hope he is, because he looks like a solid defensive midfielder. He's not Tyler Adams. He's not. Does completely different game from Tyler Adams, but he looks like more of your more traditional number 6. And I absolutely love it. So
he's kind of a force. He is a force.
Can play a little center back as well if you need him to. He's bounced back into the back line. So he's a big dude. I like it. I like the call out. So sorry, I'll give you obviously someone else that you can talk about as well.
I think. Well, I don't have a ton to go. Honestly, like I can name any of these players. Probably 90% of them I'm excited about.
He's the biggest like standout name because he's
like the X factor kind of.
Yeah.
But I think like maybe one that I I don't know if everyone's going to be looking at. I think Dejon Jones, I'm excited about because I think the talent is there. I think the quality is there. And I really want to see him continue to get minutes with our, A team, because we've seen him get minutes with lesser teams, right?
The B team, C team,
Yeah,
whatever.
and I think we've had a long conversation about where do we see players after they play with the C team versus the A team, right? Like, because it's totally different, right? When you're Dejon Jones and you're looping a ball into Balogun versus I don't even remember who was on that like C team striking, but let's just say Zardes for.
Yeah, I was just about to say Cole Giassi Zardes.
Yeah, like just I can't speak. But I mean, I think for me, I'm pretty high on him personally, and I like to keep seeing him grow. And I think left back is always a position of interest, and it just wing back in general is a position of interest for the U.S. And just the more depth possible is good. And so I think this is going to be a pretty good glimpse because I think he's going to get a decent amount of time at left back in this game.
No, I agree, especially like there are a lot of injuries heading into this camp, right? We don't have a Mark McKenzie. We don't have a few other names that just not popping into my brain as we're speaking. But
Sam Vines.
Sam, yeah, there you go, Sam Vines. But the main one that obviously
Sam Vines
is standing out at the left back spot is not Sam Vines, it's Anthony Robinson, right? who is out with a little bit of an injury. So we had to call up the some left backs that we may not have the most complete confidence
I think that's
in.
another thing though. Like that's exactly
this
where
is
this is what
fire,
you want to see. This is your chance. Like that's injuries happen, and that's the time we get to see things like this. And so that is almost why, like Pulisic, we know he can go out there and ball out. We've seen it. We've seen him do it with this team. But Jones might get only 2-3 chances with this type of talent.
Exactly.
And I think that's why it's really important for players like that to just show out. I think Maloney is potentially in that position as well. I mean, I think he's going to get called back, it seems like, based on everything we've read and know at this point. But I think there's some newer faces who I honestly, especially reading some of the names on this, I think there's some names where it's like they're actually in a different place where it's, can they do it? And we're getting to the point where we kind of have to answer those questions.
Yeah, I mean, look, Christopher Lund, we talked about him a little bit last camp. Now he's getting called back in for a second camp. I mean, Alex Zendejas, he's getting the call back after Malik Tillman went out with an injury from the camp, which kind of sucks because he's been playing well at PSV, right? So I think the one player that I'm standing out or taking a standout to look at is Gio Reyna. He's back under Greg Berhalter. Let's see how this goes. As soon as he doesn't start against Germany, we're going to see U.S. soccer Twitter ready to burn things down again. But the main point that I really want to say about this is a very strong roster. It's a very strong potential starting 11 or 18 that we can throw out there. I like that we're playing Germany. I like that we're playing Ghana. I like that we're playing some of the toughest teams in each of their respective regions, and that we
are taking it seriously. We're not
playing, and no offense to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but we're not playing them in a random friendly for during an international window. We're playing one of the best teams in the world in Germany, and we're playing one of the best teams in Africa and Ghana. And that's what we need to compete against. We need to see Florian Balogun scoring goals against Germany and not against Haiti during a warm up to the Gold Cup. That's just what it has to be.
If Ferreira scores a hat trick against St. Kitts and Nevis or something, sure, it's cool, but it's like, dude, we got to play, Brazil in the World Cup. It's
exactly
completely different.
Jesus Ferreira, you're not getting marked by, a 16-year-old.
Sorry for the stray.
Bro, it's true though. And yes, I've been one to always be a proponent of, CONCACAF teams need to play more games because you play more games, you get more competitive, you get better, the region gets better, blah, 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 blah. I've said this a million times. I'm not going into it right now. But if there's also a certain point where if you want to get ready and competitive to play in a World Cup and not look overmatched in a round of 16 game against the Netherlands, then you need to play the best teams in the world in
You have to
friendly.
play Netherlands-like competition
You need
all the time.
Exactly. And yes, that also includes going over and playing a game in South Korea and doing that and traveling and playing one of the best teams in Asia. You have to do it everywhere. And it's not just playing within your region where all the teams come visit you. It is what it is. You need to have a little bit of adversity. But
I have a honorable mention before we move on. I kind of want to see how Kevin Paredes does. I like him a lot. I'm not going to go into detail. He's my honorable mention.
That's fine. Hey, that's fine. He can also play a little left back if needed. So I like the Kevin Paredes.
Meanwhile, we have Dest just chilling. Oh, we have Scally. I didn't
we got Scally and Dest. We have left back options. There's legitimately probably 4 left back options, but we'll see who Triple G decides to give that start to.
The starting lineup will be very interesting.
Give me your ideal starting lineup off the top of the head. I can do it first if you need.
Balogun. Yeah. Probably Weah and Pulisic.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm gonna go with Maloney because there's a reason I picked him as my most interested in.
Okay.
I think Weston. Oof, this one's tough. I think I'm gonna say Musa.
Okay.
And then center backs. I kind of want to go CCV and Richards.
Okay.
And then Dest and Jones. And then Matt Turner.
Okay. Mine's slightly different. I have the same front 3 of Pulisic, Balogun, Weah. I want to see Reyna playing. I want to see
the one that was tough. I didn't know who to put.
I want to see the double pivot behind Reyna of McKennie and Musa. Maloney, I love you, but come off the bench, my guy. Left back, I want to see DeJuan Jones. I want the center back pairing to be CCV and Miles Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
Right back, and this is just really right off the top of the head. Right back, Dest, and then Matt Turner and net.
So the only differences we have is I had Maloney in center Reyna, and you have Robinson in center Richards.
And yes. Yep, nope, that's it.
I honestly heavily debated Reyna, and if I were to choose, the center backs is honestly the toughest one. I think we can agree, Tim Ream, we probably don't need to see. We don't
need to see him, but I wouldn't be upset if he played. Like that's also what it comes down to.
At this point, he's a very consistent player.
Left center back.
Yeah. But I do really want to see CCV, and then I think you can't really go wrong with the center back pairings. I hope all 4 of them get minutes.
That's fine. I'm fair with that, and I want to see Luca De La Torre play. Okay, enough of the senior national team. We're gonna do this even quicker because there were 2 more rosters that were announced that the nerdy US soccer in me just has to quickly say. The 2024, the first ever training camp for the 2024 Summer Olympics have dropped. It's pretty much it's not pretty much, it is a U23 US based roster that is going to take on Mexico and Japan's U23 sides for friendlies during this training camp. Pretty much every single player is playing, every single player is playing at a first team level globally, which is pretty cool to see because it hasn't always been like that historically. Jason, give me a player or 2, and you don't have to give me a why, just give me a player or 2 you're keeping an eye on. You can.
Dude, there are so many in this team that I'm excited about, especially 2 of them for reasons.
Chris Brady and Brian Gutierrez, we can just say it, Chicago Fire.
I want to say for this one, Caleb Wiley.
There we go. That's it. Okay, Caleb Wiley.
You told me not to say anything after.
I said you can if you want. You don't have to. It's fine.
I realized I was going to say someone else before I picked Wiley, but I'm excited about Wiley. I think what he can do in the attacking end is really interesting and offers something that I think we don't have a ton of of in that role. That's just sort of similar, but I think Wiley's the guy.
That's fair. I'm going to go with someone who I'm going to call the best player on this roster. And I think that's Taylor Booth playing for Utrecht in the Eredivisie. I think the dude is a stud if he's playing the midfield or if he's playing out in the wing. I think he could easily prove himself to be the best player on this roster by the time both of these friendlies are done. I mean, look, you got Benjamin Kramashi, Duncan McGuire. I'm just listing this off for people who don't know what the roster looks like. But Kramashi, Duncan McGuire, you have, like we said, Busio, Brian Gutierrez. You have Maximilian Deitz, who's playing in the 2 Bundesliga for Gruther Firth. I can never say that. You have Brian Reynolds, who's playing over in Belgium with Westerlo. Like, you have John Tolkien, Chris Brady. You have Obed Vargas, who was just playing in a Club World Cup. Jack McGlynn, same thing, right? You have so many talented players on this roster, and I think this is a very, very strong U23 roster, so I'm excited. If we're able to... I am
very excited about the Fire boys.
That's it. Hey, it's just more of an opportunity for the Fire to sell these guys before you guys can do anything with them.
No.
The final one that I'm even going to talk even less about here, 2023 Pan American Games. I didn't know the Pan American Games are still a thing, but they are. And the U.S., I guess it's technically just a full U.S. senior team roster, but because there's no age restriction on it. But the U.S. did drop a roster to play in the 2023 Pan American Games this October to November. Pretty much it's a bunch of U23 players that didn't make the Olympic roster, and then some U20 cycle kids. We qualified for this. What?
Yep, he should have made it.
We qualified for this tournament via the CONCACAF U20 championships. We are in a group with Brazil, Honduras, and Colombia. So, I mean, that's a pretty tough youth group. Is there anyone that you just want to shout out a name to?
I think Chitaru Odunzi, who plays for Leicester, I believe. Leicester.
No, he's playing for...
He used to play for Leicester, though.
He used to play for Leicester's youth squad. He's playing for Crown Legacy FC, Charlotte FC's MLS Next Pro side.
Okay, well, I was wrong, but I am excited to see him.
I'm going to go with another 2 Bundesliga boys. This is a big 2 Bundesliga podcast between Leonard Maloney, between, who did I just say? Between Maximilian Deitz, and now my other pick in Nico Carrera playing at Holstein Kiel in the German 2nd division. Like, he's actually playing starting center back for a German 2nd division team, playing for our 3rd, I guess, or 2nd choice U23 roster. I don't know how you want to word that, but pretty cool. There's a lot of big names on this. Go check it out. Danny Leva, Ted Kuti, Pietro, 2 pretty notable names for you if you've watched a ton of MLS this season as well. Okay, Jason, let's get into it. Let's quickly talk through the current state of Major League Soccer and then catch up on some of the, we're going to talk about some of the catch-up games before decision day. Current state of MLS. In the Eastern Conference, here are the teams who have qualified for the playoffs so far. Cincinnati, Orlando, Philadelphia, Columbus, New England, Atlanta, and Nashville. The eliminated teams out of the Eastern Conference are Toronto, Miami, and DC, like we mentioned before. That leaves for the Eastern Conference a combination of Montreal, Red Bull, Chicago, Charlotte, and NYCFC, all fighting for 2 playoff spots. Not pretty much, it is those 8 and 9 seed play-in games. The only catch-up game in the Eastern Conference that really is going to impact this between now and decision day is Inter Miami hosting Charlotte FC on October 18th, where I think NYCFC can get eliminated if Charlotte win that game. So, who do you think are going to be the 2 teams making it out of this in the Eastern Conference? I can give you some time if you need the time. I did spring that on you slightly.
I had the matches up. Okay, here are the matches.
So I apologize about that.
The thing is, this is tough. It's really tough in the East because it's not like any of these are cakewalk games. Like Montreal has Columbus. I think the Red Bulls have
Montreal's away at Columbus, Red Bull's away at Nashville, Chicago's away at NYCFC. That's probably the biggest game. And then Charlotte's hosting Miami.
I think they have 2 games, right?
Charlotte? Well, the game to make up that was missed during the season, Charlotte is traveling away to Miami, and then on decision day, Charlotte is hosting Miami. So they're just swapping home.
Honestly, I'm going to say Charlotte is one of those teams that makes it in. Just from the standpoint that Miami doesn't really have anything to play for. So
I don't think Messi plays these final.
I
two
don't think
games
so
either.
either. I don't think they
Yeah.
push it. I think they just move on to next season. So I think Charlotte actually probably gets 2 wins there and makes it in. The second team. I'm gonna say NYCFC. And there's a
Does that mathematically work?
can it? Technically, yeah, because Charlotte's 39.
If Charlotte draws away at Miami,
No, we're assuming they win both those games. They're on 45 points.
If Charlotte wins this weekend, they get pushed up to 42 points on everyone playing equal games. That would eliminate NYCFC because then, no, that wouldn't.
Technically, actually, you would then have to win.
It's impossible. NYCFC gets eliminated.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can't be Charlotte and NYCFC.
I just don't want to have to pick the Fire, man. But the Fire have the easiest game.
True.
Fuck it. It's the Fire, man. They're gonna make
Fire make it in,
and they're gonna keep George Heights, and I'm gonna feel even worse.
Okay, I was gonna go Montreal and Charlotte, to be honest. Charlotte, the same reason why you picked them. I think Miami's done. I can just see them resting a lot of guys. No Alba, no Busquets.
This is tough, man. This is so tough.
And then I think Nashville has nothing to play for. They cannot move up, or actually no, that's a lie. They have a game against New England. Damn, that's tough. These makeup catch-up games are throwing me off. So
I'm not a huge fan. Also, when you're looking at the standings, the games played is like the third bar.
Yeah.
Which is totally throwing me off.
Okay. I'm going to go Charlotte, and I am going to go – I'm still going to keep Montreal. I'm going to go Charlotte and Montreal, make that play-in game. They're squaring off.
If I were to say what's most likely, it probably is that.
Well, I guess I'm going the easier pick there. All right, let's look over at the Western Conference. Teams that have qualified for the playoffs out of the Western Conference. St. Louis, LAFC, Seattle Sounders, Houston, your 2023 U.S. Open Cup champions, Houston Dynamo. Your 2023 Canadian Championship winners, Vancouver Whitecaps, and the Real Salt Lake. And then eliminated from the Western Conference in the MLS Cup playoffs are Colorado Rapids, LA Galaxy, and Austin FC. The only games, there's 2 games that impact the Western Conference standings in these kind of catch-up games that we're going to have before decision day. One is the LA Galaxy hosting Real Salt Lake on October 14th, and the other is FC Dallas hosting the Colorado Rapids on October 14th as well. Really just opportunities for RSL and for Dallas to move up the Western Conference standings. I don't think Dallas would qualify with a win. I think they need at least 46 points. So they're still going to go into decision day with the question mark, even if they do beat Colorado at home this upcoming weekend. So, Jason, I think I've stalled this long enough for you to take a look at things.
Dallas is making it in. I think the Rapids and then the Galaxy is potentially 2 wins for them.
And historically, the Galaxy are awful on decision day. I will just say that. The Galaxy are not very, at least for
they're also eliminated, right? Like, I think a lot of these are like, okay, that one team is eliminated. It's a little bit, you have to at least take it into consideration. They're not going to, those players aren't looking to get a season-long injury.
They're going to look to rest guys, guys who are even kind of a little bit knocked right now.
You're bringing back for next season, contract talks like that.
Exactly.
So I think Dallas makes it in. I'm picking 3 teams, right? Technically.
Sorry. It is 3 teams, not just 2 teams.
So I have Dallas getting in. I don't want to just pick the 3 that are there, but I think that's what it's going to be because I think Kansas and Minnesota draw when they play each other. So I think it's probably going to stay Portland, San Jose, Dallas.
Okay. I think Portland, San Jose, Dallas specifically in that order as well. I hate to just agree with you, but I'm going to go
I don't know if it's going to be that order. Well, I guess
I think it's that specific order.
I think it has to be. I don't want to do the math.
It's okay. My pick is Portland, San Jose, Dallas specifically in that order. To be honest, I feel like really those three teams, I'm probably going to regret saying this because one of them are going to go on to like a Western Conference place, but are kind of like pointless right now in the Western Conference. Like, I don't think anyone's
I think
really.
Portland could do that thing where they just like suddenly beat a team that's way better than them. But
You think Portland could just do the thing that Portland does like every other year? Yeah.
you know that thing that they just somehow are good at, when the time is right.
Exactly. Well, look, we'll see the results this upcoming weekend of Nashville versus New England, LA Galaxy versus RSL, Dallas versus Colorado. I think we're going to probably be recording sometime around the Miami-Charlotte game next week. So hopefully next time where guys are chatting with you, we have
really
a little bit.
Look at decision day.
We have a little bit of a clearer picture of what decision day looks like, and we can really talk about that. And kind of go into some playoff predictions as well. If we have time, we'll look at our season preview picks and we'll see who was a little dumb. If not, we'll catch that up.
Wow, getting called out.
I mean, Jason, I think so far I'm not spoiling anything. I think so far you might have the most correct picks of things going on. So kudos.
I just
to you,
need the Fire to finish in 13th.
Kudos to you, sir. You did have Austin FC winning MLS Cup.
I had Josh Wolff Coach of the Year.
You were high on Austin. You were very high on Austin.
Okay. Immediately when the season started, I said, this is not good.
A little spoiler to everyone before we chat about that. I put all my eggs into Toronto. Jason put all his eggs into Austin, and you can see where those things went this year. But this has been a fun episode, Jason. We'll catch up next week. For everyone who's listening, make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting platform. If you prefer to watch the show, you can over on our YouTube. Just search MLS Aces on YouTube and you will find us. Subscribe over there as well. If you're watching this on YouTube and you prefer to listen on a podcast platform, do vice versa. Like this, leave this reviews. Follow us on social media at MLS Aces, on Twitter at Jason Vivang on Twitter as well. Interact with us. We will interact back with you. We'll catch you guys next week. Decision day is almost here. It's one of the best days of the year. Peace out.